Last time on Low Budget Binge.
I've never been scared of clowns myself. Many tools will be bloodied in what happens next. Though he occasionally bites a chunk out of her during sex. Because that's a thing, I guess? That's not necessarily ideal swimming gear. It all feels kind of unnecessary. The film also sports a cameo by Ron Jeremy simply because, why not?
And now, the next death-defying chapter of Low Budget Binge.
Welcome back to ML Miller Frights, a part of the Kings of Horror Network. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, remember to give this video a like, share with your buddies across the electronic superhighway, click subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to ring that bell for notifications. Please get the word out to new folks so we can make this channel bigger and better. Low Budget Binge is where we venture down the path less traveled, and a look at low budget, no budget, and sometimes international films that never get the top billing you see with the usual Hollywood fare. Check out that ever-evolving logo up there. Snazzy snazzy. I'll indicate in the review and down below where you can find these films along with their trailers. Here we go. Coven of Evil is directed by Matthew J. Lawrence, and it's new on-demand and digital download. It's a tale as old as time. Boy meets girl, girl meets boy, girl turns out to be a witch. When a young reporter publishes a story about witches, he's taken to task by a local Wiccan who feels he was biased in his reporting. When he agrees to check out the local coven, he finds himself falling in love with a witch who is set to be sacrificed and fights desperately to save her. Coven of Evil is a no-budgeter, which means the acting isn't the best, the editing is not going to be the most crisp, and you're not going to get a lot of bells and whistles with the way it all looks. But despite its low-budget trappings, Coven of Evil has a strong story and decently developed characters. Sure, this is not going to be for those who mainly check out slickly polished Hollywood fare, but if you're the type of viewer who pays attention to story, I think you'll find Coven of Evil to have quite a few redeeming qualities. Coven of Evil also utilizes effects in a conservative yet effective way. Some of the possession and demonic smoke effects stand out and show that there was some technical skill at play behind the film. There are those who appreciate the hard work put into no-budget and low-budget films. That's the target audience that will appreciate Coven of Evil the most. Monster Killers is new, streaming on Tubi. It's directed by Calvin Maine, Richard Powell, Ben Steiner, and Patrick Rea. Monster Hunters is a collection of odds and ends short films that seems to only share the simple theme of having monsters in the story. There's not really a wraparound segment that guides the viewer through the anthology. Instead, it seems to be a collection of shorts from 4 directors, 2 of which have multiple entries in the film. The first story is called Familiar. It's a subtle terror about a man unhappy with his life and looking forward to disappearing soon and leaving his family behind. Told mostly in inner dialogue from fantastic genre actor Robert Nolan and directed with intense close-ups by Richard Powell, this is a psychological body horror nightmare that literally will get under your skin. The effects are really palpable here. I loved it when I saw this film years ago at festivals, and it still holds up as a tensely paced man versus his monstrous self yarn that you will not forget. My personal favorite of the bunch is called The Flea from director Ben Steiner. This one is about a serial killer who murders young babies and the elderly with a wooden stake. A quiet man knows who it is, but doesn't have the power to stop him. I found this shorty to be extremely tense and filmed with a grungily effective look. The minimalist visage of the killer with a mask made out of pantyhose with holes cut into them is simple yet still terrifying. This one doesn't last long, but the suggestion of disturbing gore, and finally the actual gore spattering all over the screen by the end, makes The Flea worth every suspense-laden moment. Calvin Maine has a trio of films in Monster Killers. The best being a short but brief stab at scares that works pretty well, where an old man prepares fervently for a guest to arrive in his humble home, and recites an incantation in an ancient language to send the invite. With minimalist effects shots, only suggesting Lovecraftian monsters, this short, entitled Good Evening, makes for a light but wicked little treat. Maine's other two entries, The Sneak and the opener, entitled Bedroom Window, are more modern shorts utilizing found footage and first-person point-of-view techniques to get some potent scares. One of my favorite short film filmmakers, Patrick Rea, has a trio of terrors in Monster Killers, all of them providing a lighter side of horror and laden with a lot of dark comedy. Howl of a Good Time is a fun little monster fest set in a movie theater with a wicked tone and some very familiar faces as guest stars. But I liked Get Off My Porch the best, as it has a wonderful pace, some great comic timing, and some charming yet dangerous little Girl Scouts as the persistent monsters. Monster Killers seem to be whittled together with shorts from other anthologies I've seen, with a few new ones tossed in to keep things fresh. I didn't love all of them, but there are a few diabolical low-budget pint-sized terrors to be had. Not the best anthology of this sort, but I found quite a few of them to work on me. The Faceless Man is new on-demand and digital download from Freedom Cinema. It's directed by James DiMartino. The Faceless Man is one of those films that is challenging to review. Part of me admires the sheer balls-out craziness that is unleashed in the hour and 40 minutes this film plays out. Then again, The Faceless Man lifts a lot of its most interesting bits from other, better films. This film loosely threads together the story of a young woman named Emily, played by Sophie Thurling, who is a cancer survivor that we meet in an excruciatingly long opening sequence set in a hospital where she talks with her estranged father and chastises him for not being there when she needed him. Cut to 3 years later, and Emily has become a party girl, whooping it up with her equally reckless friends. When one of her friends rents out a house for the weekend in the countryside, it sets off a series of events that involves a briefcase full of drugs, a gang of bikers, 3 trigger-happy thugs, a serial killer, and a demon that seems to be a representation of Emily's repressed emotions. All of these elements clash together with the grace and finesse of a game of rock'em sock'em robots played by 2 ADHD adult preschoolers. There's a reckless and unhinged vibe to The Faceless Man that I can't help but admire. Filmmaker James DiMartino seems to have quite a few key scenes of action, gore, and mayhem in mind, and isn't afraid to barrel right over any subtlety, nuance, or logic to get to them. This is a film that feels as if it were made up as it went along, and damn it if that kind of energy isn't kind of attractive to me. The gore, violence, and sheer craziness really are at a level that I rarely see in films these days. That said, this is kind of an incoherent mess of a movie that lifts quite blatantly from Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and Candyman. To be kind, this might be considered an homage, but honestly, because these scenes are so on the nose, I have to call a ripoff when I see it. There really is no transition from one scene of carnage to the next, and if you're looking for any type of logic, other than the fact that the filmmaker is an obvious cinephile, then I suggest checking out another film. But the biggest crime of Faceless Man is the fact that it is in desperate need of an edit. The opening scene isn't the only one that desperately needs trimming. The film lingers and slugs along in between nutso stuff, and a good half hour could be trimmed off to make it more watchable. This isn't a film I can wholeheartedly recommend. I think there are some inspired scenes of ultraviolence, and maybe a fun idea or two being mashed together, but the lack of transition between scenes, the lingering narrative, and the sheer fact that I've seen much of this film in better movies worked against it. That said, in its ragtag, mishmashed form that it's in, The Faceless Man definitely is a unique horror film, and you can't say that about most horror these days. Uncaged is new and streaming on SHUDDER. It's from director Dick Maas, and if you've heard of that name before but can't place it, he was the twisted mind behind such fantastic Dutch horrors as Amsterdam and The Lift. Now he's back with Uncaged, a monster on the loose movie that delivers all the right thrills and chills. Big Animal veteran Lizzie, played by Sophie Van Winden, teams up with the police when a house outside of Amsterdam is attacked by some kind of animal. Though she identifies the beast as a giant lion, The local police station refuses to believe that such a beast would be roaming Amsterdam and mauling civilians. But when the body count rises, Lizzie calls in her old flame Jack, played by Mark Frost, to take the monster down. Not impressed with the wheelchair-bound bounty hunter, the local police decide to call in their own special forces team. But when they're all massacred, it's all on Jack and Lizzie to bring the beast down, before more Dutchmen and women end up as the lion's main course. While I don't think Uncaged is breaking new ground, the film is entertaining as hell. It's your typical wild monster on the loose story that uses cliches found in everything from Jaws to Alligator, from frogs to deadly eyes, from Kingdom of Spiders to Food of the Gods. There's the authorities who don't take things seriously until it's way too late. There's the sending in of experts only to have them decimated and dismembered by the monster. There's the lone scientist struggling to be heard. And there's the public not paying attention to the rules and going out anyway, despite orders from the government. Kind of sounds familiar. What makes Uncaged so much fun is that writer-director Dick Maas has so much fun with the mayhem. There's carnage to the nth degree, as the lion doesn't discriminate in terms of sex, age, or gender when it comes to its meals. Just when you think you've been bogged down with too long with discourse from a reporter, politician, or expert in the field, Maas makes sure to show an imaginative scene of carnage, with heaping amounts of blood and body parts being strewn around by a giant, ferocious lion. The characters are fun too, with Lizzie deciding whether or not to stick with her philandering boyfriend Dave, played by Julian Lumen, even though he is an asshole who seems to have slept with every girl in town. Yet because Lizzie is stressed out and horny, she continues to sleep with him as a distraction. Renus Cruel plays Brinkers, an uptight and hair-deficient cop who pops Mentos every chance he gets and is the stressed-out middleman between the public and the politicians. And finally Jack, the one-legged lion hunter who is wheelchair-bound, yet gung-ho to take on the beast with his high-powered rifle, a gut full of whiskey, and a souped-up mobile tank as a wheelchair. This is one fun cast to follow, and part of what makes even the slower bits interesting to watch. Uncaged does have a sci-fi quality to it. There are a few times when the CG is not the best, and the lion just feels animated wonkily. Still, because of the aforementioned gore, fun characters, and hyperactive script, I forgave the film for its technical setbacks, and I enjoyed Uncaged so much that I didn't even notice until the end that they didn't even explain why there was a lion loose in Amsterdam in the first place. While it's a cheap Lion on the Loose movie, it's an unabashedly watchable Lion on the Loose movie. I recommend this one simply for the fun of it all. That'll be it for today. If you like this video, please pound that thumbs up button. Share this video with your social media addicted pals. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on mlmillerwrites.com. Don't forget about my new trade paperback for my comic book horror series, Gravetrancers. It's out in finer comic shops this week. And be sure to subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for alerts to be the first to see my future videos. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're doomed. God live the life that you are meant to live inside that reality.